If you ever see any other trails, yeah, let me know. Try to do like a.
Last call before the meeting starts. We'll be selling after the lecture.
Yeah, we'll be selling more raffles.
He's good. He's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the August edition of the Tropical Fern Exotic Plant Society meeting. This is a very important meeting. As you talk about the huge crowd, it's not for me. I like to think it is, but it's not. And I want to make some announcements. I want to thank Cass for her beautiful work. We are one of the best newsletters now because of this young lady here. I want to thank all the volunteers that are helping. I want to thank Ralph for bringing the pizza in, and he's always late, but it's all right. Better late than never. And we have whoever bought the raffle table, and I don't know if you guys went by and stole some plants out of people's yards or what you guys did, but pretty amazing raffle table here. So let's, we have some good stuff to see. Okay, this is Valerie. She's in charge of the auction that's coming up in October. She's going to try to force all you guys to do something here. I heard that she's deadly with a weapon. So she's going to pass this around. And if you want to put your name down, you know, as a volunteer to help in any way.
Well, that's for refreshments.
Oh, this is only for refreshments.
Only for refreshments. But see me if you want to volunteer, like a job or to do something. You're involved in the auction, okay?
Like if you want to sell your husband off or something like that.
Okay, I'm in.
So here, just pass it around.
Oh, and if you're not sure, but you can just put down if it's going to be savory or sweet. We fill in society buys, and if we know what people are bringing, that helps us, you know, to round out the table. Thank you. Okay.
I usually
Pass
bring
it
the
around.
candy in.
Pardon?
I usually bring the candy.
Usually eat the candy first.
Yeah, but I do that too. Just start passing. Okay, tonight, as you can tell by the vast crowd that we have here, we have people from all over Florida here tonight to see someone that's very important to us. We have people from Broward, from Homestead, all over.
West Palm Beach.
West Palm Beach, yeah, we have several West Palm Beach people here. Mounts Botanical, we have some of the best growers probably in South Florida in this room tonight. I can honestly say that, probably some of the absolute best growers. And I mean, there's probably too many to count, so I'm not going to embarrass anybody. But anyway, I'm going to continue on because we're going to bring up the speaker. The speaker is someone that, if it wasn't for him, this society would not be here. Okay, he is the founder of this society. He started off as Fern, South Florida Fern Society. Just found out, I did not realize this, but actually our Paul Marcellini was one of the founding founders at 12 years old. He was out there digging ferns out of people's yards. And he said, you know what, I can do this, I can make this happen. So he's actually one of the beginnings. You know, he disappeared a little bit, but you know, he's also does photography, he's an artist. So that's okay. And it grew. Then we had the people in like Marie Knox, Marnie, and people started coming in. Bob Benay's been here for at least 100 years. So, and it grew, and we had our moments where it's quiet and things kind of crashed down, but then we kept it going, and that's because of all of you. We couldn't have done it without you. And then we brought in new people, some young crowd. We have Cassandra, Cassie over here, and some other people that showed up. So I think we're heading in the right direction. Well, we have a lot of interesting people tonight. I feel like I'm at the Emmys or the Grammys or something. You know, I feel like I should have an award. You know, we have,
It's an almost meeting.
This is amazing. Yes. We should start charging.
Well, it's not crazy.
So anyway, I'm going to introduce this gentleman. He's been collecting plants all over, mainly Asia, I guess. I guess he went to South America as well. He's phenomenal. And he's been, you know, kind of quiet because he's a very busy man. But I'm not going to stop. I can't say enough about him to do him justice. So I'm just going to say, ladies and gentlemen, the great Reggie Whitehead.
Good evening. I am very humble and very happy to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out this evening. We're going to talk about ferns.
Yay!
A little information about the origins of the club. There was another plant society, and at that time things were changing, and so we decided that we wanted to branch out. And so Paul Marcellini was one of the founding members of the society, and it was actually Paul who suggested that we do ferns and tropical plants, other tropical plants. All of us, everybody in this room, grow different types of plants. You're just not aroids, you're just not palms, you're just not ferns. We grow lots of different things. So happy to see so many. I'll start crying. I'm one of those. But anyway, very happy to be here. But that's where we are, and that we are sort of the nature of the beast was that it was going to be an umbrella. We've lost lots of different plant societies, and so we can still pick them up underneath this umbrella. So why don't we start talking about what ferns are and what ferns are not? There are a couple of plants that are out there, Asparagus springeri and Asparagus plumosa. Not ferns. Can anybody tell me why they are not ferns? Reggie, I know. The reason that they are not ferns is because they produce flowers, berries, fruits. And so I normally try to pilfer some from my neighbor's property, but I didn't see any flowers or berries on this evening, so I guess I won't be going to jail for pilfering plants from my neighbor's property tonight. But anyway, in the fern world, there are ferns, true ferns, as many of these are, and then there are what we call fern allies. Fern allies are, they're not true ferns, obviously, sort of foolish to say, but they are vascular plants. I will introduce some of them to you tonight. And they produce spores, and so that's where our fern allies are. I don't have a lot of fern allies here tonight, but I'm going to, I'll start with the first one. Years ago, we had a gentleman by the name of Don Keller, and many of you might remember Don. And an easy way to remember what the fern allies are it's an acronym, PILES, P-I-L-E-S. So PILES, the P is for Silotum. Silotum is spelled with the P. That's the whisk fern that you see growing out of trees, out of rock. So Silotum, P-S-I-L-O-T-U-M, Silotum. Then you have Isoedes. Isoedes are little grass-like plants, and I've only seen them in Southeast Asia. And the only reason I knew that you really would step on them if you did not know what they were. I saw the fruiting bodies, the spore bites on there. Then L, lycopodiums. Now, I've done something, I'm going to cheat tonight. About 10, 15 years ago, they separated lycopodiums into lycopodiums and Hupersias. And so I still like to call a lot of my lycopodiums, and I have not gone to Hupersia. So this is one of the Hupersias, Hupersia that was lycopodium. This is Phlegmaria.
It's beautiful.
And now that brings us to E. E would be equisetum. E would be equisetum. And then S would be, oh my God, S would be our Selaginella. I'm still not impressed. And then there's one other fern ally that we generally do not see here. I've seen it in New Caledonia. I've done 17 plant collecting trips. And so the last one was 20 years ago in 2000, almost 2004. We were doing I was doing a talk, giving a talk in Sarawak in Borneo, talking about aeroids. But anyway, so we do move about. And that was the last time we did that one. And so that last one is called Temipteris, and Temipteris is with a T, Lepteris. Let's talk about some of our true ferns. This is a fern, Ophioglossum pendulum. We know it's a fern because generally, and I don't have any fruiting bodies on it right now, but usually there's fruiting body on here, and the fruiting bodies will look like a rattlesnake's tail. and yellow. And I will tell you where you can find, this one did not come from this, but it is becoming, I shouldn't say invasive, but they're becoming rather ubiquitous here in South Florida. Near the falls, there is a row of canary date palms. And some of these ophioglossums have started growing there. I believe there's a mycorrhizal fungus that helps any little plants to grow there. And so when you see rows and rows of date palms, take a look to see what's on them, because sometimes you're going to find these sort of hiding there with the Spermatosaurus scolopendra. I'm sorry, I'm slipping back into my plant world. But anyway, so believe it or not, this is a fern. It's called one of the ribbon ferns. Another fern sort of looks like a ribbon fern, but we call this a shoestring fern. This is Viteria ensiformis. We have a native Viteria here. Viteria, chat, where's our chat? Lineata, thank you very much. So we have shoestring ferns here.
Sorry.
Chasing me for stealing plants, I know, okay. All right. All right, we talked a little about how ferns do not produce berries or seeds or flowers. How do they reproduce? By a number of ways. One of the things that we know about ferns, they reproduce by spores. What you're looking at here you're looking at the sori, or the fruiting body of a fern. And this is how we sometimes identify the genus or even the family of what a fern is. This one is from the Asplenium group, which is the bird's nest group, which is this group. And their sori are sort of linear. So you've got these lines on there, and I'll show you different types. I cannot bring this plant, it's about this big, that sits in a giant pot by my front door, so I could not bring that. And then looking at other types of sporing fruiting bodies. This is the fruiting body of this plant. This is a Belvisium mucronata, I believe. And so the spores will come. That little tail, that little rat's tail, is where the spores would gather there. Here's another rat's tail. This is one of the pyrosias.
That's my favorite.
We can find it. Here we are. Years ago, when I used to do the sales at Fairchild, the Ramble primarily, people would complain about the brown spots on the plants. And so we would have to explain to them that, you don't want to wash those off. They're sort of essential for the plants to grow. And so you have to explain what those are. When we're talking about spores are microscopic, so you generally cannot see them. If I were doing a class, and I used to bring in 2 microscopes, and I would take a fern leaf, or we can go with this, or even this one, and just lay it on a sheet of paper, a couple of sheets of paper, and as the spores do his, as the sporangia releases its spores, then you've got a pattern of what the spores are. And then when you're looking at that pattern, you're not only looking at spores, and it's best to be seen underneath a microscope. You can, and then the sporangia, the debris that's the covering up here. What other? This giant plant here, I brought one of these to the auction a couple of years ago. And this is a mystery plant for me, and some people wanted to categorize it and put it in the classification of Polypodium scolopendria. Well, this is Polypodium scolopendria, and we do not know what this is. I got this plant from one of our members, Sally Ju, years ago. She collected it in Burma, but she did not have any collection information, and there's not an awful lot of information on Burmese plants. And so we still don't know what it is, and I've not worked with a taxonomist, a scientist who could identify this plant. but the story is entirely different. It comes up, the interesting thing about it, they start off with a single blade. So this is a simple blade or once pinnate. And then over time, it starts dividing and it starts doing crazy things. One of our members, Melanie? Yeah. Showed me that one of her plants that she got from me, and it's doing quite well. And the reason that it's in a pot, and I got some in pots, and I also have some that are in ground, so they make excellent ground cover. While we're talking about pots and what plants are, we have, with our ferns, we have ferns that are terrestrial, those that grow in the ground. So like ourselves and out here. We have our epiphytic ferns, that would be a bird's nest. Good place to mention this. When you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you see a bird's nest in a pot, when you take it home, take it out of that pot. I do research, I had not much research. I discovered that they just use an ordinary or a dirt. Bird's nest ferns are epiphytes. And so they need the roots to be free, they need to breathe, so to speak. And so even while I have this in a pot, what I have in here is probably an orchid mix, so that it's free draining. And so, asplenium, which is the bird's nest group. This is also an asplenium. And I don't want to talk about this one too much. And this is also a member of the bird's nest group. This is also an asplenium. The purpose of this talk tonight was to show you the variations of ferns, because most people think that ferns are like the rabbits with ferns that I have down here. But they are not. When I first started doing ferns, or how I even got into ferns, my mother worked for someone years ago who had a giant staghorn, Platycerium bifurcatum, and that was my first love affair with ferns. I bought my first bifurcatum at, what was that place, Tropical Flea Market at Bird Road and Palmetto? Yeah. Yes, I'm that old. But anyway, I bought my first plant there, and so it was Platycerium bifurcatum, and grew it. Then I did my first collecting trip, and that was to Jamaica with a couple of other plant people there. And then once you get into the wilds and start collecting plants or seeing what's out there, you're like a kid in a candy store, and you gotta have this thing, you gotta have that, and you have to have this one. And so I started doing other things. But as I was beginning to say, my first foray into ferns was through the staghorn ferns. This staghorn ferns, and perhaps in the future we'll do a talk on platyceriums on the staghorns.
Yay.
But there is the story, that dreaded brown spot patch that you want to wash off or not wash off, because you need that to grow plants with. We're looking, while I'm holding this one, there's so much I want to tell you all, I can tell you all about plants. Staghorns. Not going to do a big talk about staghorns tonight, but as you can see, there are two types of fronds here on the staghorn. You've got the fertile frond, which has the patch there, and then you've got the base frond that sort of forms a nest. There are other plants that do that as well. We call them dimorphic. Things like drinarias also will have two types of fronds. And then another plant, and I did this one for spite, because right now, in the plant world, variegated plants in the aeroid world have sort of taken over the market. Am I right, Ian? So anyway, I just brought this one to show this is a variegated drinaria, and so it's called the oak leaf. This is Drinaria quercifolia. Quercifolia meaning oak type. But anyway, so this also has dimorphic plant structure. years ago, I was doing theater. That's what I do. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. But anyway, I was working up in Blowing Rock, North Carolina, and I went by a shop. It was before I had to go to rehearsal. And I peeked in the window, and there was a basket full of, that was made of the oak leaf part of this plant. It has not produced, I don't see any right now, the other form right now. But anyway, so there was a basket made of Drynera crucifolia. So I waited around. I had a couple of minutes before I had to go to rehearsal. And I talked to the sales clerk and I said, how much is the Drynera basket? And she looked down her nose at me and said, that's not a Drynera, that's a stagworm. So I said, okay, but it's Drynera quercifolia. And she glares at me because what would I know about her shop? And so I went on to, explain to her, and Drynerias have two different types of leaves, just like stagworms. And she sort of screamed at me, well, the guy who sold it to my vendor knows what he's talking about. And so I said, nevertheless, I would like to have the basket. I was trying not to show off, but I did not tell her, I didn't give her curriculum, vitae or my firm, knowledge. But I do have the basket, and I don't know if she ever learned about what it was going to be or what it was. Sure, who knows? Who knows? We talked about some of our epiphytic ferns. We'll talk a little about our terrestrial ferns. This is a genus that I love. It is called Tecteria. There are a couple of Tecterias here, Heraclifolia, which is the halberd fern, and Tecteria incisa, which is the nuisance fern. And any orchid person or whatever plant group you grow, incisa tends to spore a lot everywhere, and it becomes a pain in the neck. This is a plant that I collected I got this at a nursery in New Caledonia. And so, unfortunately, this one is not invasive and it is not a nuisance plant. I wish that it was, but it is not. Sometimes, but this is, I'm sorry.
What's the name of that?
Tecteria, I don't,
It's beautiful.
I forgot. Hold on, I can give you the,
I'm sorry.
no. Tecteria pseudo-sinuata. Yes. But it's quite delicate.
I think you could have made up a name.
I know, but I can't do that. I can't do that. Another of our fancier ferns, or what people like to call our bear's claw fern, the Davalias. And so this one is probably a Davalia denticulata. We'll talk about this one. I understand that this is on Instagram. This one is Microsorum whiteheadii. A little background information about this one. Most of us know the name John Banta. John Banta was a good friend of mine, and John Banta, like me, used to do lots of plant collecting trips. And one year John was out several countries collecting plants, and so he found a plant, little something, and threw it in a bag, because John just grabbed everything and threw it in a bag. Maybe 5 or 6 years later, I was in Sumatra, in Southeast Asia, and we were at this limestone outcropping. As I mentioned, I've done 17 collecting trips, and at one time you could freely collect plants, and I'm just being discreet about doing it, but freely collect plants. And now, about 20 years ago, it became more difficult to bring plants in. You have to have a phytosanitary certificate, some other regulations. But the day that we saw this plant growing, I found it growing on a limestone outcropping, let's say about 50 feet tall, this outcropping was. And so we collected a few pieces of the plant there. But at the same time as we were collecting the plant, they were mining this outcropping for marble. So the site location for that plant is destroyed. And so I don't feel so guilty that, I was able to get some of it. So I brought the plant back here, and still just a little piece, and so we had no idea how large they were going to get. I've had some fronds that get about 2 feet long on this plant. They are calciphiles, and so they like growing in rock. And so once I put a little lime or something on there. But that dirty lime, yeah. Wow. So we grow these here, and as I will repeat this, the sad thing about that day was that we were dodging, the excavation machine as it was, cutting down the rock and just sending it down. So brought this plant home. I contacted Barbara Jo Hoshizaki, who was our leading fern person from out in California, and then she and Dr. Alan Smith at Berkeley started looking, because I don't know every plant species that's out there. There are 10 to 12,000 species of ferns, and mostly in the warm tropical places, such as where we are in Southeast Asia. So she contacted Dr. Alan Smith, and so he went through virtual herbariums throughout the world, through different museums, looking for that plant, and it did not exist. And so they asked, so Reggie, what are we going to do? I said, well, I'd like to name it after John Bandit, because he found the first one. And he goes, no. And I said, well, let's call it, something else. And I wanted to name it after my partner, Tom Moore. No. You've done a lot for the fern world. Why don't we name it after you? And so, voila. And so that's eventually how it got the name Microsorum whiteheadii.
We have them.
It's a slow-growing plant, and
It gets all twisty too sometimes.
at times. And the interesting thing about it is, and you can feel the leaf, it is a thick leaf. Yes, yeah. It's not paper thin, and it does not have these leaves on it. Do you see? No, I don't see any on there. Okay. All right. Another fern group that I enjoy growing, which was my second fern group, the maidenhairs. I used to have about 100 species or 100 different types of maidenhairs. That was the cultivars. This is Adiaxum polyphyllum. And so the maidenhairs did best in my collection after Hurricane Andrew. I grow my plants primarily on my patio, and there's an enormous oak tree that stretches over the patio. And after Andrew trimmed the tree for me, so therefore it let a lot of light in. And so plants first like dapple lighting, but it was just the right amount of light to grow maidenhairs. And then after the tree started, flushing out and all the leaves came back out again, after several years, my maidenhair started dying off. And so I learned a valuable lesson. So I've managed to keep a couple of maidenhairs alive. Different types of ferns. This one is a pyrosia. It is the same family as this one. This is Pyrosia abbreviata. It is something that I actually saw growing in the wild in Sumatra. So climbing trees, to collect plants like this. And when I found when they were growing, they were only tiny orbicular little fronds. And as you can see, that with different growing habits. And I guess this, they're long and the fronds are a little larger. But this is one that Chad, did I ever give you a piece of this one? Oh, okay, all right. So we try to share plants, to ensure they're. And then let's do our neighbor. Tinnitus thronii. Not a tree fern, even though they have a habit sort of like a tree fern. But this is our native plant here in South Florida, and it goes throughout the Americas. But it's called tinnitus, and that's tinnitus started with a C. C-T-N-I-T-N-I-T-I-S. Tinnitus thronii. I know that I've tried to cover an awful lot of information for you all, And so I'm going to turn to questions now. Yes, sir.
Can you discuss the growing conditions of yours, based on the different groupings that you spoke
Yes.
about? And also, what would grow fern-wise, what would grow in northern central Florida?
Okay, generally these will not. As you know, that we are divided into the subtropics, tropics. Hardy fern? No. But anyway, we are blessed. When I go plant collecting, we primarily are looking subtropical, tropical, subtropical. And so these plants grow well here. I have two major growing areas at my house. My patio, my screen patio. I've just had the patio rescreened, and so with a lighter screen, so I'm getting more light in there, and I'm getting better growth. I'm still learning about these things, but I'm getting better growth. And then I have a shade house area that is governed by a avocado tree. And so, but plants usually, ferns generally like dappled lighting. And so they have microclimates as well. I've had some plants where I tried to grow it in one area and it may be too dark. So if I move it, just 2 feet away into another area, it's going to be perfect for them. Okay.
Do you fertilize?
Yes. Just generic. Yeah.
Peters?
Peters, yes, or any of those, the blue stuff, just generic stuff. You were asking about where plants will grow. One of my favorite maidenhair ferns is called Adiantum pedatum, and it grows northeast. It's a hardy fern. Well, I was working in Connecticut one summer, and I saw this beautiful bed alongside the road one day, and I collected some, and I brought it home. And I knew that come wintertime, because I knew that it would need a cooling off period, so I decided to put it in my refrigerator. Well, come on, I'm gonna try to approximate Mother Nature. So, but I don't have the knack, and Mother Nature has it. I could not figure out how long to keep it in there. So I put it in there about October-ish, and so I put the roots in a little bowl, and then I brought it back out in March, so trying to approximate what Mother Nature does, and it lasted for a year and did not make it. So then I found myself back in Connecticut the following year, and so I collected more, because I was not going to give up. And so this time I decided, well, maybe it needs a permafrost, so stick, the roots in the freezer this time, And I sort of approximating Mother Nature once again, and took it out about, March, April, trying, and it still lasted about a year. So sometimes plants that grow in other areas, especially the hardier zones, will not do well down here. So, where do you live?
Volusia County.
Yeah. Some will and some will not.
9B.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. You know your zones. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
How big a piece of property are you growing all these things on?
Just a half acre. But like I said, the ferns are. Oh, we didn't even talk about the big plants, the Angiopteris. Well, I could not bring an Angiopteris. Angiopteris are primitive ferns, and it is rumored that dinosaurs munched on them. They're one of the few other primitive plants species that survive. I used to have a large collection of them, but over years, with my going back and forth and not being here all the time, sometimes plants die off, and so I'm guilty. So I've killed a plant or two. 100. But anyway, we won't discuss that. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you keep all your bird's nest ferns in pots or some of them in ground?
I have recently started putting stuff in ground.
Yeah.
But I've amended the soil. I will buy mulch, dig my hole, because as you know, our soil is very alkaline here, and I put the mulch down there, and I set the bird's nest down in there, and so that's what I'm doing.
I have a lot of it's under a tree and lots
Enough? Oh, yes.
a lot of beneath the tree, and they seem to be very happy.
Yes. Probably. Yes, sir.
Has Whitehead been discovered in habitat?
No, I don't. Rediscovered by, what do you mean?
Do people know that it even exists still after the outcrop disappeared?
Okay, I have looked at a couple of Asian websites
We split that.
who are selling them, and so people are finding them, but I don't know where they're finding them, so I don't know the source. But I do know that the type location from where this particular plant came from is destroyed. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
How often do you fertilize?
It's irregular. I used to travel a great deal with theater, and now I'm home for a little while. I've got lots of projects going on at my house, and so I'm trying to at least fertilize once a month now. Valerie, where's Valerie? Valerie, who is one of the premier growers down here. Valerie, how often do you fertilize?
Every month, or it could be like once a week.
What fertilizer?
I never do it full strength. It's always very, very gentle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically, it looks like if you're watering.
She's not
it's got
gonna
a little bit of-
Okay. All right.
I remember when you told me, I asked you how often you fertilize, you told me every time you water.
Yeah.
Many years ago, you
Well,
told me that.
I'm lazy now, so. Yes.
What's your favorite fern?
My favorite fern, I don't know. My favorite group of ferns, and I used to have about 15 different types of Tectaria. And I'd always wanted to do give a talk on the different types of Tectaria. So I suppose they were my favorite. My first love though was staghorns, then second love was the maidenhair ferns. And so now like a kid in a candy store, I grow everything that's out there. Or I try to grow everything that's out there. Yes, Valerie?
Speaking of staghorn, you sort of, I'll put you on the spot, you sort of implied you'll be back to give us a.
Sort of implied.
You led us to believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was
That's the future.
excited. I
That's the
was
future.
excited.
That's the future.
We'll write it down.
Okay, yes.
City water on Friends. I don't have a nice water system and I can't collect enough rainwater for everything in my yard. So how do I know when I buy a Fern if it can take the city water or not?
Okay, these are pretty much grown on city water. Yeah, I don't have an RO system. I suppose if I did, they'd be in much better shape. But I don't have RO either, so I can still get some city water.
I know you're gonna get told about staghorns, but
That was subtle.
but do they all require about the same conditions?
No. She was asking about staghorns and the conditions. As many of you know, there are about 18 or 19 different species of staghorns. There are 4 major staghorns that are solitary plants that do not pup, and the others pup. Oh, what are they? Superbum grande, Hopotomii, and wande. Yeah, those do not pup. And as far as those 4, as far as I know, will require the same growing. Superbum supposedly does not do well here because we are too wet, so to speak. California, I've seen the nicest specimens in California Southern California, because it's drier. Well then, grande does well here because grande is from the Philippines, and so Philippines tends to be a little more wet, and so that does here. Paul, you were growing, where's our Paul? Paul was growing a nice wande down here, and the only one that's really, some of the African staghorns that don't do well here are things like Madagascariense, because they require probably cooler nights. They do well in California where there are cooler nights for them, and they also tend to grow in connection with Cymbidium orchids. So that's probably mycorrhizia fungus that helps them grow there. But generally speaking, they don't do well here. Ridley eye does not do well here either. So, all right, yes.
Based on the current market, which is the most expensive fern you have here? Please don't tell me it's the variegated one.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, the variegated's right up there with.
Yeah. I remember when Home first brought those in from Thailand, and he just brought a box of them in and did not know what they were, and so I gave them, and then he discovered that there was a market for them. I think they were $250 a piece.
They were very expensive.
at
Yes,
that
I
time.
didn't get any.
Oh. at that time. But anyway, probably that one. And probably the rarest of here is probably the pyrosia, the one with orbicular leaves, because it's not around. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for coming out this evening. I thank you all for listening. I did put one of these on raffle table over here. And so I'm anxious to hear, whoever gets it, how it grows. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. White over here is going to sell some more raffle tickets. We still have some, I don't know if we have food or drinks back there or not. I don't know.